Jenny and Arthur, could you please each give us your name and tell us your occupation?
Jenny Robb, our tour operator.
And Arthur Donald Robb. I used to be a concreter, now I've retired. I work for the wife.
He works for me.
Thank you. Could you please tell us about your backgrounds? Arthur, we just had a little bit of yours, and how you came to live in Kaya and how long you've been living in the area.
I moved down here 23 years ago. I spent 17 years in Brisbane, and I came down here looking for a property on a river, access to the ocean, and this is what drove me down here. And I found it in this area, and it's gone on from there.
And I met my first husband in Sydney, and he was a Davidson of the famous Davidson whaling family here. Moved to Eden. We moved to Kaya with a small baby in 1982, and I lived just over the ridge from where we are now. And Arthur and I got together in the early 2000s, and we got married in 2001, and so I've been on this property for 20 years. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you tell me about the businesses that you were running before the bushfires came along? What businesses the two of you were running together?
Sure, you talk about the caravan store.
Well, we have a large yard, and we did caravan storage. That was one way of bringing income when I first arrived here, and that's been totally burnt. The shed's gone, and all the fencing and that's gone now, so we just have to reconstruct that. And then Jen started a few other businesses up.
So I had kayak tours running out of the property, and we just established 2 campsites. We've now got 3 because we had to look after some people who were evacuating from fires north of Bateman's Bay. So we created another one. But so we had 3 campsites, the kayak tours, and we also ran a walking tour in the national park south of here called Light to Light Camps on the Light to Light Walk. That business can't operate now because of the fire. National Parks have advised us recently that they're not starting to re-establish the track till 2021 with a view to finish in 2022. So in an email from National Parks with no actual name attached to it, we were advised that we had no business for the next 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So all 4 businesses were impacted.
Can you just describe the location of Kaya for those who aren't familiar with where you are in Australia?
Where our property is 11.67 kilometres south of Eden, New South Wales. Kaya as a locality goes for another, 50 odd k's around the area. So, and there were over 45 homes destroyed in Kaya that I understand. Yeah.
And you're just north of the Victorian border, is that right?
Yes, about
50 kilometres.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the other kinds of businesses that are in your community?
At Kaya itself, there are mostly small agricultural or just, home hobby farm type things. In Eden, a lot of tourism businesses, hospitality businesses. There's a small fishing fleet. There's a mussel farm. Nearly everything has a link with tourism, though. Yeah.
Yeah. And before this most recent season, what was your knowledge of bushfires like, your experience of bushfires?
We'd been in the RFS for close on 18 years, and we haven't seen any major fires, but I've seen enough smaller fires to realise that we don't want to be here when this big fire came through. So we protected our house as best we could, and we left.
Yeah, okay. Maybe just on that, when you say you protected your house, can you talk a little bit about the preparations that were made both on your property and in the area in advance of what looked like a bad fire season?
Well, our house is concrete all the way around the house, so that sort of kept the fires away. We have a big tank above the house. We turned the tap on when we drove away to happily just moisten the ground a little. Seemed to work. And we were just lucky. That's all it was. It's just nothing you can do with a fire like that will save anything if it hits in the right time and the right pace. And other areas, forestry did give them a hand. They came and knocked over trees and around some of the houses. They came through, asked us if we were okay. I said, yes, we're fine. There's nothing more we can do. And yeah.
Having
about-
river flat helped sort of just slow it a bit. I think occasionally our neighbour he stayed on the flat during the fire and watched the fire come up the hill, but none of the river flats seemed to have burnt. So that was sort of just slowed it down in some sections, I think. Yeah. But it was so dry, I'm surprised that helped.
Yeah.
It was very, very dry.
Yeah. Talking about the process when the fires came through, if you're comfortable doing so, would you mind just briefly describing what happened in your area? And maybe talk a little bit about the information you had as to the fire, where it was, and what you found useful in that respect?
Firstly, the ABC radio probably saved a lot of lives in this area. Yes, there was the Fires Near Me app, but it wasn't as updated as the Victorian app. And being close to the border, it was frustrating to see on both the apps. The fire looked like it had a hard edge along the border. It was ridiculous. And, you know, when you don't know where the thing is, we knew it was coming. For 3 days we knew it was coming, and we knew it was between Malakuta and here, but we didn't really know where. And that was a bit, that uncertainty was a bit scary. Yeah.
Yeah. So you evacuated when you saw the fire was coming. When was that?
We knew the fire was coming.
We evacuated around lunchtime of the day.
On the 4th of January.
The 4th of January. We went into town, down to the wharf, because that's the safest place to be. And we just left it at that, and we had no idea what the fire. You couldn't see anything. The smoke was at ground level. You could only see probably about 5 metres in front of you, and that was it. Yep.
Knowing that the fire was coming, I understand that you had taken some of your assets off the property. Is that correct?
Yes. Anything that we made money out of, like the caravan storage, or the camper trailers, the all the camping gear, all the kayaks were taken into town, put in a safe location.
Yeah. We knew the fire had hit Malakuta on the 31st of December, and we had a bad day here that day, and we weren't sure. And then we knew that the weather was going to change again and push it our way. You know, on the 4th, we were watching that really closely, the weather. So we just worked flat out for those 2 days between, just getting everything out of here. And I spent a lot of time like cancelling bookings, and because we were booked out. We were booked out everywhere. So I spent a lot of time on the phone, just sorting that out, getting refunds back to people and so forth. Yeah, we knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the period just before and after the fires, did you lose infrastructure, power, phones, road access?
All of those. We lost power. We lost power, we lost phone. The highway was closed from about 10k south of us to the south. So we had our son and daughter-in-law here with our grandchildren. So we sent them home early on the 31st because we knew the weather was going to change, and they took 10 hours to get to Melbourne because they had to sort of crisscross all over the place as roads were closing and opening around them, which was terrifying for all of us. I can't remember what the question was now. I'm sorry.
It was just about losing critical infrastructure from the area with road access, power, telephone, those sorts of things.
So we had no power for, I think, 3 weeks. In saying that, Essential Energy were excellent. Whenever we called, we could get somebody who was telling us roughly when we might get power. We had no mobile service for at least a week.
Or longer.
A bit longer, actually. And we had no because we had ADSL broadband. That whole line got cooked, so we didn't have any internet for a month. That was really challenging when you're trying to communicate with people who've booked we had bookings for the walking tours, the campsites, and the kayak tours. So I had a lot of phone calls and emails to make and refunds to do, which was very challenging when we didn't have any of those services.
Yeah. So how did you manage that with the business when you didn't have any phone access at your property?
Oh, all sorts of ways. I went and sat in cafes in town that if they had internet. I'd sit in the main street because there's Wi-Fi in the main street of Eden. Frustrating though, because often what I needed to look for was on the computers back here or whatever. Yeah, or I just drove up. If I drove up the road about 3 to 5 k's, if I got on a hill, I could pick up mobile service. So I sometimes hotspotted off my phone because you didn't want to get dressed, like when you go to town, when you live out of town, you have to get dressed properly. I was like all sorts of stuff going on in my head. I just wanted to get the work done, but yeah, it was challenging.
And what was the state of your property like? It looks very green behind you at the moment, but I mean the fire came through, so it didn't look like that at the time.
No, absolutely not. It was black everywhere.
Yeah. The house itself.
The house itself survived. It burnt all the way around the house to within a metre and cracked a window. But yeah, the house is it's corrugated iron for a reason.
So was that house specifically built for the environment?
No. Initially it was a shed, and they had it lined inside, and they had fibro on the outside, but the fibro started to fall off, so I got Colorbond. I put it on the walls just to the cheap, easy way of.
But we also knew it was a good fire protection. Arthur was a concreter, so we have a lovely concrete veranda all the way around the house, and that also, I'm sure, helped. We moved all of the furniture off the veranda. Everything was off the veranda, so there wasn't any. We knew, having been in the fire brigade, we knew about ember attack. We knew how easy it could be to start a fire, so everything was off the veranda. So there was nothing that was likely to be able to catch and ignite the house. So our preparation combined with good luck saved the house. Yeah.
Very good. Other than that, the house was saved.
Yep.
Did you lose other structures on the property?
Everything else. All of our sheds, the bridge to one of our campsites, and the whole garden. Yeah. And the garage.
To those of us who live in cities, a shed might sound like it is not necessarily of significant value, but I understand that if you're living in the country and if you're running business off a country property, tell us about the value of the sheds.
Well, the shed was 7 metres deep and 100 metres long. So it was a very large shed, and we used to store the caravans in it for undercover storage. That's what it was built for.
That was one part of the shed. The other part, we concreted the floor and put roller doors in, and that was where we stored our kayaks and all the gear for the kayak tours and the trailer for the walking tours. So, yeah, losing the sheds was probably pretty major for us.
And were you insured?
Yeah, but when we had $70,000 insurance on the big shed, and when they assessed it, they said it was probably $270,000 to replace it. So we haven't replaced a 100-metre shed.
Was that a surprise as to the actual cost of replacement?
I thought it was a little bit high, but yeah, I expected it. We were definitely under.
Yeah,
what we were insured for.
It's hard to assess, you sort of don't, when you're getting house insurance, and you sort of don't even think about the fact that the whole lot could go. You think maybe, something ignites in the shed and it burns down and it's just one shed, but it was all the sheds, and that, yeah. So we were underinsured. We were lucky that we had the insurance that we did have, because that's enabled us to rebuild a smaller shed. But yeah, we still got a bit to go.
So where are you currently keeping the things that were previously in the shed?
In a container. So all the kayaks are shoved like a Tetris into a container at the moment. that we
A shipping
bought.
container?
Beg your pardon?
Like a shipping container?
Yeah.
Yeah, shipping container.
We had, so we applied for a grant straight away because we had to get the kayaks out of the shed we had in town because it was being demolished. So we had to get them home, but we had no security. So our son in Melbourne organised for a container to be brought up. Yep. I can't even remember when that arrived. Halfway through January, maybe.
Okay, so we've touched on this a bit already, but could you describe, maybe just take us through the whole of how the fires have affected the businesses that you were running before they came through?
Well, we can't have the caravan storage anymore because we lost the big shed and all the fences. We've re-established a campsite, but it's not where we want it to be because the bridge to the campsite burnt. We probably had maybe 2 tours between the fires and COVID, and then COVID hit. So, but we would have been getting some bookings by now, I think. And we can't run the light to light tour at all. Where we run it, which was on a specific walking track that has been completely obliterated.
And the time of year that you've missed, from summer through to now it's June, basically in winter, is that a busy time for your businesses?
Yeah.
Our walking tours would have been ramping up now. We had bookings right through till October for those. We sometimes have kayak tours in June, but it's mostly for internationals. June, July, August tends to be international. So we had a busy long weekend because the 3 campsites were booked out. So yes, we've missed pretty much the main part of the year with the kayak tours. We're normally busy up until now, and then it slows down until about September. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why we do the walking tours then.
And what was the effect of the fires on the rest of the community, the businesses that you said largely are connected with tourism?
I can't even begin to think that it's just huge, absolutely huge. Not only the personal impact and the mental impact on everybody, because everybody knew someone who lost homes, but we lost all of our tourism trade. So on the 1st of January, ironically Arthur's birthday, there was a community meeting in town, and basically that was where they said all the tourists have to go home. We had family in Bermagui, and they described the panic and the chaos that went on there. But once they'd all gone, with the roads closed, they couldn't come back. Even if we had the empty esky, stay with us, all that stuff going on, they couldn't get here. So that was a massive impact, and it's people are still reeling, and I think a lot of business will close.
How long were the roads closed for again?
I think 4 to 6 weeks, depending on which road. They were all over the place. Yeah. It was a long time.
And that's the school holiday period, isn't it?
Yeah, and we get 75% of our domestic tourism from Melbourne. So that was the road that was closed. So from Bairnsdale pretty much north to the Victorian border or further, that road was closed for weeks and weeks. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then school went back. So, well, it didn't, or it did. But yeah, all of our holiday makers couldn't get back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Massive impact.
Okay, so in that context, can you talk for a bit about the kinds of support that have been offered and made available? What the process has been for seeking and obtaining that support, and what about that has worked and what hasn't worked?
I think we're lucky that the Bega Valley Shire had some experience with massive fires from the Tathra fires a couple of years ago, because they were very quick to establish a bushfire recovery centre in Bega. It was awkward that it was in Bega to start with. They set out some satellite ones later. It was pretty overwhelming, but I don't blame anyone for that. It was just such an overwhelming event and so many people impacted that it was confronting. The first time I went there were people still bandaged, you know, so, and it was just traumatic repeating it over and over again to different agencies. I think it would have been, you know, in hindsight, obviously, be great to have just one person hear your story instead of having to say it over and over again because it gets overwhelming. We were able, I mean, I'm pretty switched on with grants because I've done that in the past with my work. So the grant process wasn't that onerous if you were burnt. So we had plenty of evidence. Everything was burnt down. So we had plenty of photos to show that happened to us. I know of lots and lots of small businesses that were really traumatised by the whole process and not able to get a cent until well into January, and then it was like $10,000, which really didn't have any impact on them. They were floored.
Were those businesses directly or indirectly?
Indirectly. You know, an example, a little brewery up the road. I mean, we collaborate in tourism all the time. We work together all the time, and I talk to the friends of ours that run this business up the road, and their first 2 weeks of January trade is normally $60,000 to $70,000, and they had $6,000. It was just, and then it was like, oh well, you know, you weren't impacted because you weren't burnt, but people couldn't get here, and that was why they were impacted as much. You know, obviously the first week after the fires, everyone was just reeling, and no one wanted to work anyway. But once that was over, the initial, but mind you, we had smoke for a month, so that didn't help. That didn't make it feel very comfortable here. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us what financial assistance you've been able to get for your businesses?
We were lucky. We were able to, because we had a number of businesses running out of here and 2 ABNs, we were both able to get the $50,000 from the New South Wales government. That was a huge, huge injection and helped us get our shed back up. Well, we've got one garage built now. We've got the shed slab down for the new shed, and the shed kit arrived yesterday. So we're doling it out. And although we were insured, we weren't insured to the extent that we probably should have been. So that's enabled us to rebuild a shed that's purpose-built and going to help us, you know, get back into business. Yeah.
In terms of money from charities, have you personally had any interactions with charities?
Yes, in the first week when I first went up, everyone was, look, you spent virtually the first 2 weeks in tears. We got $20,000 from Red Cross, but I had to really almost beg for that. Mainly because our house didn't get burnt down, but we had no income at all, and we were pretty worried about that. We had to send back $18,000 in deposits on one business alone. So we were watching our bank balance hit rock bottom, and we just thought we're going to have to start dipping into our savings straight away. So we applied for the Red Cross money, got told no a couple of times, and then I went back to them and I said, we have no income. So they ended up folding, giving us $20,000.
Yeah. We were virtually camping in our house. We had no power, no phone, no nothing. Luckily, we had a generator which we used for the walks. And so we used the generator here for when we had the kitchen, or then had to move the generator to get pumped water, and that's what we did for about 3 weeks. But safety-wise, we had to be here.
You said that the process of applying for assistance actually hasn't been too difficult, so long as you had direct damage, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
Do you think that would have been the same if the house had burnt with records and things like that? Do you think?
Probably only because I'm reasonably savvy and I cloud base a lot of my business documentation and my bookkeeping. It's in the cloud, so probably for me, it probably wouldn't have been so bad, but I would say a large majority of people aren't at that point. So, yeah, I really would feel for anybody who was a bit challenged about, like a lot of these businesses are small businesses and they don't have, they have a cash book, They don't have proper records and they certainly probably don't have them stored offline, online somewhere. So, yeah, that would have been horrendous. I don't know how you would do it, to be honest. Yeah.
Um, can you talk a bit about other people's experience in the area a little bit more? With have other people applied for loan for support and been refused, or are you getting the sense that people are getting the support that they need? Other people around?
No,
you?
I'm not getting the sense that they're getting the support they need. Absolutely not. Most people that I talk to are still pretty traumatised by the whole event and the aftermath and the lack of understanding about that indirect impact. That's just really sent them reeling, nearly all of them. And then insurance companies arguing that because they weren't burnt, they couldn't access like the loss of income and stuff like that. That was I believe from talking to others, it's been really hard, even with really switched on businesses.
Yeah, you've mentioned mental health a couple of times. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more specifically about what that means for your community in the future?
Wow, and Eden in particular has been through a whole bunch of terrible stuff over the last 25 years. So, well, it's interesting. What was really obvious within a very short space of time was the community support within the community. A lot of people just came out of the woodwork and everybody seemed to get on. Everyone seemed to be really, and we only talked about this the other day, everyone was really quite calm because they knew everyone had been affected. I think there was a bit of, almost a feeling of camaraderie that we'd all survived this thing. But yeah, I think there's going to be ongoing mental health issues. Even us, sometimes we still crack up for no apparent reason. Yeah.
Is there mental health support?
I have not sought support probably yet because I think it's still pretty raw. I know it's 5 months ago, but it's still, because of with COVID and everything, I think that it really just sort of was a double whammy. We haven't personally sought support, but we've thought about it. Yeah.
Do you know if it's available if you want it?
I don't know what's available. No. In the past, regional areas have not had a great track record with getting any mental health help. I don't know that it'll be any different. And there's such a huge area in Australia was burnt. There's so many communities affected that I don't know whether there'd be enough mental health workers around, to be honest, to cover it off.
We've covered quite a lot of ground. Is there anything else that you'd like the commissioners or the public generally to know about things that you think need to be done better that we haven't talked about already in terms of either the period before the fires or during the fires or the support period afterwards?
We need people to be moved back to regions, and that will build resilience in small communities for the future. So I'm a tour operator. Eden relies on tourism, but we also need other agencies and other businesses to prop up our economy so that when disasters like this happen, there's still money in town. There's no money in our town now because of that. And those people have secure jobs. They have a secure, when you work for the government, you know that you're covered. You know that you're not going to lose your job because there's a bushfire, but that's not happening down here. Those people have all been moved away. We need them back. All of them.
National parks are a very large percentage of your local council area. Is that right?
Yes. between national parks and forestry, they own 75% of our shire and they don't pay rates. So we've got a little tiny 33,000 people shire trying to manage some of the biggest areas of forest in Australia. It's nuts. It's really nuts. And then they're begging for money to try to support other businesses like tourism and in other industries like that. It's wrong.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Arthur, did you have anything?
No, I don't think so. She speaks too well. Yeah.
She does speak plenty.
Yeah, that's right.
I can
Okay,
tell you the
final question.
Yep.
Your area, your community's been through a lot. First there's the fires and there's COVID-19. Where do you see your local community going into the future?
This is the land of opportunity for tourism. We need support, we need infrastructure, and we need funding to do that. And the federal government and the state government, all of them need to understand that regional communities need constant support. Otherwise, we're all going to end up living in Sydney, and I tell you, we're not going there. But we need to start thinking outside of metropolitan areas and start putting some of the decision making back into the local areas. And Eden's an amazing place and a beautiful place.
Okay. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.